Welcome, everyone, to the program. I'm Justin Miller, your host of the Media Row podcast. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, all that good stuff. Follow us on social media. We greatly appreciate it. We also greatly appreciate our show's sponsors, as always, Stevens Automotive and Sales and Kelly's Little Nipper. Kelly's Little Nipper, 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Make sure to get there because you're going to have great food, great drinks, and even better community over there at Kelly's Little Nipper. Historic Kelly's Little Nipper. When you go there, make sure to use this keyword in Woodley. Use the keyword Woodley, and your first drink is on the house. I mean, get over there for Monday night football, Thursday night football, after Friday night lights, Saturday, watch football all day there. Do whatever. Go to Kelly's Little Nipper is what you need to do. That is what needs to be on your schedule. So go over there to 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines and make sure to let them know that Media Row sent you. It was an absolute amazing weekend of just football. Football season is officially back because we had high school football on Friday. We had an NFL full slate on Sunday. Great games on Saturday. Football season is finally here, and it feels so good to be able to have a full sheet of paper that is just chock full of notes to actually go through games and start to really learn about these teams as we are finally done with kind of that speculation period. Now you're really starting to see where these teams are at. Yes, there's going to be a lot of growth for these teams, but we're starting to learn more and more about them each week. But a great weekend. We had our in-state rivalry. We had guys getting spit on, which I hope is a trend that ends here quickly, as we saw it on Thursday night, but we also saw it Saturday night in Florida. We had drama on Sunday. We had all great action here today. So, of course, we're going to break down the CyHawk game. Want to talk about some other big NCAA news in terms of the hottest team in the country right now, finally breaking into the AP Top 25 poll, as well as talk about a few teams that got knocked out as well. So let's start with the game of the week, the game of the state, the Super Bowl of Iowa, the CyHawk. Iowa State wins it 16-13 over Iowa. Iowa State AP Top 25 as number 14 getting bumped up. Iowa, of course, with losing, still outside of the AP Top 25. But I want to start here of just what a great day for the state of Iowa. So you had Fox Big Noon Kickoff. You had Barstool Sports all over it. You have Dave Portnoy doing his pizza review in Ames and talking about how great Des Moines is. And again, I may not be a diehard Barstool Sports guy, but it is really cool to see. When you open up Twitter, Instagram, and you see a guy as popular as Dave Portnoy and the people at Barstool and Fox Big Noon Kickoff in Ames, it's really cool. It makes you feel proud. And I remember as a kid, the CyHawk game being on the Versus channel. Do you guys remember that? The Versus channel, the channel that to me felt like it was strictly for old boxing clips and bull riding. Yeah, the CyHawk game was on Versus a couple of times. Then it got bumped up, it was on like Fox Sports and it was on ESPNU or 2. But these last few years, College Game Day has come twice. Now Fox Big Noon Kickoff. You're getting guys like Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt broadcasting the games. That's incredible. And that's a shout out to Hawkeye fans and Cyclone fans making this an attractive rivalry and just really shining light on a rivalry that sometimes gets overlooked. It is such a great rivalry. And it didn't disappoint on Saturday. Iowa State wins in dramatic fashion, 16-13. I mean, I think everyone expected it to kind of go this way. I know we did here at the show. But listening to Joel Klatt, listening to all the local shows, you hear a lot of people talk about how this was going to be a war. This was going to come down to turnovers. It's going to come down to special teams. We said it multiple times as well. And that's what happened. So it was a great game that wasn't surprising in the way it ended, because this is how this rivalry has felt the past few years. But I do want to go into some notes for each team before we really kind of dive into how Iowa State was able to come out on top. And I want to start with Iowa. Let's start with the guy who is getting his jersey burned by fans and is the talk of every Hawkeye fan after that game. The $2 million man, Mark Gronowski. 13 of 24, 83 yards, an interception, 37 yards rushing, and 1 rushing touchdown. I thought he was fine. I thought he was fine. Is it what you want from a $2 million quarterback? Not at all. When he comes out on the field with a minute 30 or whatever it was on that final drive, you want to feel confidence. And I don't think anyone watching that TV or listening in or live at the stadium felt any sort of confidence in Gronowski. I thought he made some better throws. I thought he looked more comfortable than in week 1, but he's not the guy that you would want as a Hawkeye fan. The only thing he does differently than the quarterbacks that have come before him in the past 5 years is his ability to escape the pocket and get some yards with his legs. That was a key difference. Iowa State really kind of struggled against that. I think they were kind of willing to make Gronowski run the ball, but they did struggle. There was 2 big drives that Iowa had going into halftime and coming out that were their best drives, 2 16-play drives. And we'll get into the Iowa State side of that. But other than that, he had a few throws that were on target that were completely dropped by Iowa Hawkeye receivers. He also had some moments where he completely disregarded his progressions. His vision wasn't there. Not a great performance, and one of the more disappointing 2-game stretches I think an Iowa quarterback has seen. And that's saying a lot. So, Gronowski, he was fine. It was okay. Again, nothing shocked me of what I saw, because it's all been done before the past 5 years. We've heard the hype, and this is what happens. I said it last week, and I'm saying again this week. Nothing shocks me when it comes to an Iowa Hawkeye transfer quarterback underperforming. With that being said, some positives with the Hawkeyes. I thought the defense was really strong. In that first quarter, Iowa State could really do with what they wanted. They were marching up the field. They get that field goal. They were really kind of in control of that game in the first quarter. They had over 100-some yards. You had Hawkeyes offense with like 23, 25 yards of offense after that first quarter. And I said it to my buddies as we're watching the game, as Iowa State better keep this going, because Phil Parker is going to make some great adjustments, as he always does. And that's what he did. I thought the linebackers really performed well. I thought they made things difficult for Rocco. I thought they really honed in on the run game and really forced Iowa State to kind of struggle, make some questionable play calls as well throughout that game. But I thought the defense made adjustments, and if you're a Hawkeye fan, I think it's the same storyline we've been preaching for the past few years of the quarterback is not going to save you. The quarterback is not going to be the reason you win games. The defense has to be incredible. And they were good. They made great adjustments. They were not incredible against Iowa State. But Iowa, they did things that they wanted to do. If you're Kirk Ferentz, 2 of the biggest things you're looking for is time of possession, which they outplayed Iowa State 31 minutes to 28 minutes. They outran Iowa State, which is a huge stat that we talked about last week on the show, of 131 yards rushing for the Hawkeyes, 104 for Iowa State. That's now 2 years in a row, though, that the winner of the rushing game has lost the game at the end, and Iowa State both times benefiting from that. But now moving on with Iowa State. Worst offensive performance that we've seen this season. 134 passing yards, 104 rushing yards. Rocco was just slightly off. I give some credit to Iowa's defense of making adjustments. I felt like they made adjustments. I thought the linebackers started reading those screens a lot better in the second quarter and third quarter that Iowa State was trying to get past with. But overall, Rocco still had some wide open receivers against the Iowa secondary that he usually nails those passes and was just slightly off. He nails those. This game is completely different. I think Iowa State almost runs away with this game, at least keeps that foot to the pedal that we were talking about at the end of the first quarter. But instead, slightly off on a few passes, keeps Iowa's hopes alive. Cyclones defense, the two 16-play scoring drives, really tough to watch because Iowa was just marching up the field through the rushing game. And there were a couple of just uncharacteristic penalties that I'm so not used to seeing from a John Haycock squad. Caleb Bacon, who's a veteran, had one. You had one later on in the end zone of just some really questionable plays after the play is dead. Penalties, I should say, after the play was dead by that Cyclone defense. But overall, Dominique Orange, I thought, was really impressive. I thought that defensive line was really impressive. The secondary continues to be great. Jeremiah Cooper is easily going to be a name to look after in the draft combine. This team defensively did what they needed to do to win this game. The final thing I want to talk about, and I don't want Iowa State fans at all to think that I'm putting down Matt Campbell, because I'm not. I'm just curious on how Cyclone fans view this, because as an outsider for the past few years covering this game, it feels like Campbell coaches the CyHawk game completely different than others. And I think Taylor Mauser, his strategy going into this game was different than it usually is. Thought Iowa State really went away from trying to open up that playbook and open up the receivers down the field after Rocco was just slightly off a couple of times. And they went away from Carson Hansen, who in the first drive of the game, Iowa couldn't do anything to stop the Iowa State run attack. Iowa's defensive line looked very beatable. They couldn't tackle. There was wide open gaps made by the Iowa State offensive line, and Carson Hansen was a huge part of that. After that first drive, Iowa State went away from it, and they got really conservative. And I've seen that for the past 3 years of Iowa State versus Iowa from Matt Campbell. And I feel like he coaches this game differently because I never see it happen later on in the year. And now they won the game. Again, I'm not trying to put down Matt Campbell, but it is just something I notice. And I would love for Iowa State fans to comment, to comment on YouTube, Twitter, wherever you are watching this. I think you can comment on Spotify as well. And I would love to get your point of view on that. But Iowa State won this game for 2 reasons. Number one, MVP Gabe Burkle. Burkle, the tight end, the awareness he has to make that catch off of the tip pass changes the momentum of that game entirely. If that falls incomplete, if it's picked off, roles are flipped. Iowa has the lead by a minute left in the game, and Iowa State now has to march up the field. 2, I felt like Iowa State just out Iowa. Iowa State won the line of scrimmage game. That is something usually Iowa does. Iowa State's offensive line allowed 0 sacks. Iowa allowed 3 sacks. Iowa hasn't not recorded a sack in a game since November of last season. They haven't won a game without recording a sack since 2023. Iowa State, their defense, they did exactly what they needed to do, regardless of those huge drives coming into the halftime and coming out of halftime, where they forced Iowa by the end of the game to beat them off of the arm of Mark Gronowski, and they did what a lot of people expected them to do. In 4 plays, Iowa went -5 yards, and Iowa State recorded 2 sacks. While on the other side of the field, you have Rocco Beck, who everyone has confidence in to lead a game-winning drive. And last but not least, the special teams. Back-to-back years, Kyle Conradi hits a 54-yard game-winning field goal. And that is why Iowa State comes out and wins the CyHawk Trophy for the second year in a row. So Iowa State moves up in the AP Top 25 poll to number 14. They will take on Arkansas State, a 20.5-point favorite going to Arkansas State, but I think a lot of Cyclone fans remember 2 years ago going up against Ohio and how that went. So it'll be interesting this weekend. Iowa at home at night in Kinnick against UMass. Moving on, I want to get to some other top news after week 2, starting with the hottest team in college football. Hottest team in college football is at Iowa State, who has 2 incredible wins over their rivals in Kansas State that was ranked at the time in Dublin in week 0, or Iowa, who always plays teams tough. No, it's not Iowa State. Is it Ohio State, who beat Texas, the number 1 team, and then goes out and just blows the doors off of a way lesser opponent in Grambling State and is now the number 1 team in the country? No. It is South Florida. South Florida has 2 top 25 wins and are finally in the AP Top 25 poll as number 18. And they could win a 3rd straight top 25 game as they play number 5 Miami next. South Florida starting to make waves, and they're a fun team to watch. If you have not watched South Florida yet, make sure you watch them against Miami. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on that Miami-South Florida game. I think a lot of money is going to be going on the Bulls as well as a favorite upset pick. After what they did to Florida on Saturday, taking down the Gators, a top 15 squad in the swamp, and the way they did it, and it wasn't flashy, it wasn't a blowout like it was against Boise State. They had to earn that win. And I think it really impressed a lot of people around the country. I know it did for me. But the quarterback play, let's start there for the Bulls. Byron Brown, really strong athlete. 200-yard games to start the year. Doesn't turn over the ball a lot. And then while you have a strong quarterback, the Bulls are able to be consistent on the ground as well. So you really put a lot of pressure on defenses to contain 2 strong aspects of South Florida in passing and running. They've had back-to-back 100-yard games on the ground. So South Florida, hottest team in college football right now, finally breaking into the top 25. That is not the top story, though, as Florida's head coach, Napier, job on the line, terrible loss. Terrible loss. And I didn't fall for it. I shouldn't say fall for it because it happened, but South Florida was the favorite upset pick of the weekend against Florida. And I had Florida winning the whole way. In the swamp at night. Healthy Lagway. Hell, when that dude's healthy, he's 6-0 as a starter, 7-0. And I think he's an incredible quarterback. I think this team has so much potential. And yet they come out and look flat offensively, and then on defense make some really crucial penalties down the stretch. 2 really bad penalties that give South Florida the field positioning, the timing to really chew down that clock and kick the game-winning field goal. Napier, I feel like for the past 3 years or whatever, he has been on this hot seat. We've had this conversation. This is a terrible loss if you're Florida because it's a coaching issue. It was strategy, mentality. There's no injury to blame this on. There's no Lagway was out. Lagway was banged up. This is bad penalties and coaching. And it's not going to get easier. This hot seat is going to be scorching by the time these next 5 games are up. We're going to learn a lot about Florida. Listen to these next 5 games. At number 3, LSU. LSU probably is going to be favored by double digits. At number 5, Miami. At home versus number 7, Texas. And then on the road against number 16, Texas A&M. Good luck, Florida. Can't get past South Florida. I don't know how you get past any of those teams. Something has to change. And like I said, that seat could be scorching for Napier. So while South Florida makes their way into the top 25, we have a team that got knocked out. And this one killed me to watch because I was so close. We can go back and watch the tape. I was so close to picking Mississippi State. Mississippi State at home takes down number 12 Arizona State 24-20 in what could have been the game of the weekend. CyHawk was amazing. South Florida was great. Michigan, Oklahoma was good. It got interesting there a little bit in the second half, but Oklahoma felt like they had control most apart. For me, it was Mississippi State, Arizona State was the game of the weekend. And it was the on-the-field equivalent of what was going on in my head when I was making those picks last week of, I think Mississippi State's going to win. Oh, but man, Arizona State, they just don't make a few mistakes. If their quarterback can get the ball down the field, they were going to be tough to beat. I didn't feel like I had control in who was going to win that game. I don't think anyone felt like either team had control of that game on Saturday. But Mississippi State, with 30 seconds to go, bombs a 58-yard pass, Shapen to Thomas for a touchdown with 30 seconds to go. Arizona State, first half looked awful. Second half, they rely on that run game like they did a year ago. Run first offense. They put up 17 points in the second half. They had 251 yards rushing, 82 yards passing. Hawkeye fans say that's a normal Saturday. And kind of all the issues I had with Arizona State going into that game, where I wanted to pick Mississippi State and I just couldn't get myself to do it, I think were proven true on Saturday night. I thought losing Scadaboo is crucial to this team, that I think the quarterback has potential, but there's no player with a takeover ability for Arizona State. Scadaboo beat Iowa State single-handedly in the Big 12 title game and almost beat Texas in the college football playoff. And it's not because of Arizona State's defense. It's not because of the quarterback play. It's because of Cameron Scadaboo. This year going into the season, a lot of people are really excited about Arizona State, and I was not seeing it because I don't see an X-Factor takeover type player on this Sun Devil squad. So they are officially out of the top 25 and have some ways to go before they can get it back into it. They're going to have opportunities down the road. Big 12 is starting to heat up a little, even though Kansas State's definitely not looking as great. They're out of the top 25 after a tough loss to Army. And Baylor, though, looks good with the top 25 win, and Iowa State, BYU. Arizona State's going to have their opportunities. It's just going to be difficult. Last college football conversation I want to get into. Just the Heisman conversation, and we'll talk a little bit about Oklahoma and Michigan, because John Mates here, he is the guy that is starting to get talked about a little more. So the Heisman list as of today of recording this show. LSU's Garrett Nussmeier, plus 900 to win the Heisman. You have Miami's Carson Beck at plus 1,000, Matier for Oklahoma at plus 1,000 as well, and then Texas's Arch Manning at plus 1,300. Watching that Oklahoma-Michigan game, we had Oklahoma beating Michigan. It got interesting in that third quarter where Michigan put up their 13 points, but it really, I thought the defense was going to be the biggest reason or biggest improvement for Oklahoma. Knew their offense was supposed to get better, but at quarterback, Matier, 662 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, on top of 3 rushing touchdowns, 98 yards with his legs through 2 games. He has been incredible and has been a huge help to Oklahoma, who was non-existent offensively a season ago. Oklahoma up to number 13 now in the country. Michigan falls to number 23. Their opportunities are scarce. They're going to have a lot of opportunities to improve and learn on themselves and have not as tough opponents as Oklahoma, because they don't play another ranked opponent until Ohio State at the end of the year, at the time of this show. I thought Underwood for Michigan was fine. True freshman in that atmosphere, a lot to ask for him. He wasn't consistent, 9 of 24, 142 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Michigan just had to lean on the running game. Justice Haynes, 19 carries, 125 yards, 1 touchdown, and Michigan falls. Game I thought would be a little closer. I thought Underwood maybe would have gotten the offense rolling a little. I knew Oklahoma's defense was going to be tough. Was not expecting as strong of a impression that John Matier made on me. That is for sure. So that will do it for our show. We have more NFL stuff to talk about throughout this week. We didn't even touch on the first weekend of the NFL season. We have a lot to get to. We have Wednesday with Woodley, as Joe Woodley is coming on the show to preview a huge game as Drake hits the road. Game number 2, welcome to South Dakota. They have to go through the Jackrabbits and the Coyotes in back-to-back weekends on the road. So a lot ahead for the Drake Bulldogs. We will hit on that on Wednesday along with some more NFL talk. And then Friday, of course, preview the weekend's games of NFL and college football. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to go check out Stevens Automotive and Sales at 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. Great place to go. Whatever you need for your car, they got you covered. 35 years of family owned and operated. They're loyal people. They communicate effectively with everyone, and there's no BS involved. Stevens Automotive and Sales, proud sponsor of the Media Row podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to follow us, like, subscribe, comment, all that great stuff, and continue to follow us along as football and basketball season get going here in this state. We will see you guys Wednesday for our Wednesday with Woodley.